The politics of tipping can be tricky, and I'm hoping that you can help me with this one, Lauren. Listeners, if you don't know, Lauren used to live in New York, and it's all she'll talk about.
What? The secret is out.
Well, when I first went, I did not know that it is basically a federal crime not to tip. I was buying 2 drinks, and I came back to our seat, and my friend who does live in New York said, "Oh, how much did you tip?" And I was like, "Tip? He only poured some drinks."
Sam. The rule is $1 a drink.
But he didn't even pull the pints. There was none of the, get the right angle and pull the pint down and get the right amount of head. No. All he did was crack 2 bottles open, put them on the table. Oh, $1 tip, please.
Doesn't matter. I once got a manicure in New York, and I also didn't know the tipping rule at the time. And when I came to leave, the woman stood in front of me and blocked the door. So I was held to ransom. I had to give her cash to be able to leave. Problem was, opening my wallet smudged my nails.
Welcome to Moral Money with me, Sam Meadows, a personal finance reporter at The Telegraph.
And me, Lauren Davidson, the head of personal finance.
This is the show where we bring in The Telegraph's top commentators to referee your financial disputes.
If you've ever had a spat with a neighbour, or maybe you're squabbling with your siblings over that family heirloom you know is yours, this is the podcast for you.
Absolutely. And as always, we love hearing from you. So if you have any thoughts on today's episode, or you want to suggest a moral money issue that you want us to discuss, then leave us a voicemail. The number is in the show notes.
Joining us today on Moral Money, a journalist who's reported on almost every topic from all over the world, from Paris to the Balkans, via obituaries and the comment desk. He's ended up with what is quite possibly the best job title here at The Telegraph. It's our special correspondent, Harry de Quetteville.
Harry, welcome to Moral Money.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Well, you've reported from lots of exotic locales, so we think that you've probably spent money in lots of interesting places.
I have. I've got a bundle of notes. Such a pleasure. You know, now that one doesn't get a passport stamp in one's passport from all over the world, I've got a bundle of notes from old Iraqi rials, new Iraqi rials, you know.
Okay, great. Well, that means you might do well at this little game we've got prepared for you.
Oh, really?
In a moral money
I'm not
first.
even sure that Iraqi rials are rials. Are they dirhams? Okay, I'm going to have to think.
Yeah, in a moral money first, we have a quiz.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're going to give you some countries.
Okay.
And we want you to tell us what currency they use.
Okay.
So, do you want to kick off, Lauren?
Okay, let's start with an easy one.
Yeah.
France.
The euro.
Well done.
Thank you.
I was worried, but we got there.
Okay, another one. Sweden.
The krona.
Well done.
Very good. All right, well...
Step it up a bit now.
Yeah, let's have some hard ones. So, Hungary.
The forint.
Ooh.
Very good. Very good.
I was Balkans correspondent. I spent a lot of time in Budapest. Great city
course.
if you're thinking of going there.
It is a great city.
Beautiful.
It
Beautiful.
is.
How about Vietnam?
Vietnam. It's not the dollar, Vietnam dollar?
No.
Almost. First syllable's right.
I don't know. Dirham, no.
It is the dong, I am reliably informed.
Gosh.
This is news to
I'm
us
almost
too.
pleased I didn't get that right.
And let's go with the hardest one we could possibly come up with. Nicaragua.
Central America. I have no idea.
Do they even have currency there?
I have no idea. Nicaragua. I'll say the dollar again, only because it's a Central American currency, but I don't know. What is it?
I'm going to let Lauren have a stab at pronouncing this one.
It's the Nicaraguan Cordoba.
Is it?
And this is also something that we learned today.
How
Absolutely.
interesting.
Endless japes on the money desk.
Yeah.
always having
well,
fun
you're
like
the envy
this.
of everyone. But the Cordoba. How interesting.
Yes.
And what did you find in your research? Why?
Hey, this is a one-way quiz.
Oh, sorry.
You don't get to ask this question. That's not how
That's the
it's-
problem with inviting journalists on your program, isn't it?
I spent 10 seconds on Wikipedia.
We asked the
surprising.
questions.
Okay.
Well done, Harry. You've passed our moral money quiz of the day.
Yeah.
Good enough for us. You can stay. Before you jetted around the world, though, my sources tell me that you were a waiter.
A waiter. I was a waiter. Yes, I was a waiter. I started when I left university. I trogged around to restaurants that I really liked, and I thought the restaurant business was fascinating and intoxicating, and I wanted to be a part of it. And eventually I got a job at the very bottom rung of the waiting game, and in a top restaurant called Coast in Albemarle Street in Piccadilly many moons ago. And it was extremely hard work. And there was definitely a moment where I got this job in Paris. It was my first journalistic job, not with the Telegraph, but with another little magazine. And I had to make a decision. And the maitre d', the guy who'd hired me, sat me down after the restaurant had closed and said, do you want to stay in the restaurant business or you do this? Because I tell you, in a few years' time, you'll be running your own restaurant, it'll be a lovely time, be fantastic. And that's the only sliding doors moment in my life. I look back and think,
what if?
Should I? Could I? Would I? Yeah. What if? So I think it's a wonderful business.
Well, that leads us very nicely into our first moral money conundrum of the day, which is all about tipping.
It's almost as though you planned it.
Never. I'll just read out the letter sent in by a Telegraph reader. I read a few years ago about well-known high street restaurants taking waiters' tips for their own pocket. Since then, I've refused to leave a tip. Why should I pay 10% or more above the price advertised for the food? However, a friend recently questioned this practice, and I've started to feel guilty. He said service staff rely on those extra few pounds to boost their income, and it's not like I can't spare the change. So, is our reader being unreasonable?
Well, there are a couple of issues there. I mean, the first thing is that, yes, restaurant staff definitely do depend on the extra that they get through tips. When I was a waiter, all that extra was pooled, and then it would be divided among the waiters depending on your seniority and how long you'd been there. So sort of more fly-by-night characters like me would get a smaller share, but, long-serving staff who the restaurant really relied on would get more, and it was a really important part of one's paycheck. The obvious way round what you're saying, or what this reader's dilemma is, that, you don't have to pay the service charge on a card or whatever. You can actually just, give a fiver or a tenner to, cash, hand it over to the waiter, him or herself, and say, here it is, thanks very much, you've been brilliant. And that also allows you to make a distinction between, maybe the food's been terrible, but the service has been great. And, maybe the waiter's really gone that extra mile to make your time a happy one. And so, cash is often a way around it. But of course, when, that also presents problems. When I was waiting, if you were seen as an individual waiter to put a cash tip in your pocket, the other waiters would evict you, basically. It was a sort of 2 strikes and you're out rule, right? Because all those tips were pooled. And so as a diner, you don't know what system is being operated.
Of course, and that's one of the issues as a diner, isn't it? You don't know whether and I always worry, because I don't carry cash very often these days.
Fewer people do.
And I sit down for dinner and it comes to tip, and I have the option of adding a tip onto the card, and you don't know how that will end up. Will it end up in the waiter's pockets? How does that happen?
Of course, and then sometimes you think, well, I'll just ask them. And so you say to the waiter, do you get this? And the waiter can make this sort of eye-rolling gesture like, yes, I get it, like, not really, So it's even if you ask a waiter, it can be really hard to know what happens, or it's just complicated to get your head around. So,
But Harry, even in a system where you're pooling tips, which you might sort of think at face value seems like a fair way to do it, if you've got really good service from a waiter and you want to thank them individually, saying, I really appreciate what you did for us this evening, you don't necessarily want that going to another waiter. If it is something that gets pulled by all the waiting staff, that is a different system than thank you for your good service this afternoon.
It is true, but you're tipping for ultimately it is the institution which is, you're going to, and it's a bit like saying, well, the Daily Telegraph, if it's just one journalist you really want to thank, well, ultimately it's the paper, you buy the paper, and you're going there, and you hope that there is a certain uniform level of service across the board provided by the waiting staff and sort of enforced by the management.
It depends. You mentioned that, making that distinction between what is a tip actually for? Is it for the good service of your waiting staff, or is it also for the chef who cooked your food and the maitre d' who seated you at your table?
It shouldn't really be, right? You should be able to have the worst food in the world and a really good service.
Yeah.
But of course we conflate the two. How can you not? If your food's disgusting, it's pretty hard to hand over a meaty tip to someone. And of course,
as you've alluded to, it creates a moral dilemma for the waiting staff themselves. I've done some waiting in my days, and my first job at a little café in Oxfordshire when I was 15, I have to confess that I pocketed some tips.
Well, I think that's
even
fine.
Though they
Maybe
were supposed to go into a central pot.
Was it?
Yes.
Wow.
But I have to confess that when I could get away with it, I did.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
Gosh. I won't name the cafe, so
They'll be after you.
Yeah,
there's absolutely no way they'll remember me. I was being paid about £3 an hour for dog's body work and worked about.
And that is another thing, is if you feel that, waiters are being exploited by restaurants, then you can feel sort of sorry for them. And, it can turn into quite an ugly atmosphere. And, going out for a meal shouldn't be something that makes you feel uncomfortable about whether you're doing the right thing. So I think it's incumbent on restaurants really to make you feel that you're getting a good service and make that you feel that there's some clarity over what you're paying for, really,
Sure.
and who's getting what.
A lot of restaurants today will just put 12.5% on your bill at the end of it. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a tip? Is that a sort of service charge? Would you ever say, actually, can you take this off my bill? I don't feel like you've earned this evening.
Yeah, I definitely think you can take it off the bill. I definitely think you can. I think, it's important to recognise that the vast majority of restaurants go to the wall in the end. It's an incredibly knife-edge business. I've worked... I did a piece of this paper actually working in a 3-star Michelin restaurant and in Paris. And so I spent 3 days in that kitchen working there. And you see the margins they work on. They would put caviar on the plates, 50, 60 quid plates, dishes. And they used a plastic spatula to get every egg out of that tin of caviar, every single egg. And the chefs had to show the main head chef that they'd done that. Every margin is so tight. It's not, we mustn't think that restaurants are evil and just coining it in, because I don't think that's the case.
Well, Lauren has touched on an interesting aspect of tipping, is how conditional is it? I personally, I hate it when the service is added to the bill. It really grates on me because I feel they should have to earn the tip. And I will tip unless the service is bad. If the service is only okay, I'll tip. But I hate it when it's added on. But I have friends who I've been out for dinner with a group of friends and the service was awful. We didn't, a waiter didn't come to us for 45 minutes when we sat down. And even after that experience, at the end, when I suggested removing the tip, there was horror in my group. You can't do that. I mean, what do you think about that? Because on the flip side of that is that the restaurant has a margin and...
Well, then maybe they should be more honest and increase their prices. But it's it's very hard. It's a cutthroat business. There's a restaurant next door with lower prices. You go into that one rather than theirs. And so, I think the margins are very tight. But like you, it really irks me that service is sort of obligatory. Yeah. And in a way, I find something more attractive about the American system, where service is 20% and more. And it really, if you leave without paying service in America, they will chase you down the street and say, what was wrong? Where can I have my cash? Because it is a service-driven industry, country, culture. But that does mean that you can get amazing service.
Yeah, they work
the whole
for that.
Culture is driven towards pleasing the customer. And although that initially can be rather antithetical to the British Reserve and you feel slightly overwhelmed, after a couple of days you're like, this is great, they actually like me and it's fantastic and I feel good. I could get used to being treated well, by service industries. So there's almost something more honest about that.
But the system in America is quite different, though, isn't it? Because it's a completely different employment benefit system. A lot of restaurants will underpay their staff, and it's up to you as the customer to pay the staff's wages, which I think also grates on a lot of people.
Yeah.
In the UK, that isn't quite the case. We have employment laws here that protect restaurant staff to a certain extent.
It's still not paid well.
No, but I think a lot of people, and this has been reflected in the reader comments as well on this, when this was posted online, feel almost like they're being conned. You're adding on 10% to the cost of what you've said. This costs £10 on the menu, but actually it's going to cost a little bit more when you come to pay. I think people would rather just see extra prices.
They would, you feel. I mean, it's definitely the same thing. If you look at any industry, who hasn't been infuriated by booking in the past a low-cost flight, and then you get to the end and it's like, and by
you wanted
the way,
to sit down. No, sorry,
you wanted
that
to sit down, and by the way, there's going to be airport tax, and what you thought was going to be a 25 quid flight, it's actually going to cost you 160 quid, and you think, well, I might as well have gone BA because that was the price they were advertising. And I think those sort of practices have now been, you know more about this than I do, have been made illegal, I think, in aircraft booking.
To some extent.
Yeah.
To some extent. So, there is no doubt that a what you see is what you get attitude is what customers want. The question is, would a what you see is what you get attitude with restaurants put people off? If you said your lamb casserole is actually going to cost you 26 quid a plate instead of 21 quid, or is going to cost you 18 quid instead of 13 quid for your, posh burger in your pub, then, and that's what prices can cost in London now, then would you actually buy it? The answer is probably a lot of people wouldn't.
Right. Well, as ever, we did put this to readers on the Telegraph website. And actually, it was quite even split between what Telegraph readers thought. So we asked, should you tip restaurant staff? 29% said only after checking that the restaurant doesn't keep it. 33% said, yes, it's bad manners not to leave a tip. And 38%, so the sort of the winner here, says no, you've paid for your meal, and that should include service.
I'm quite surprised by that.
Yeah, but it is a close call there. Although, as one reader pointed out in the comments, I suspect the difference between those who tip and those who don't is whether you do or have done a really tough job, like being a waiter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think waiters do work hard, and my sympathy is, despite the occasional terrible experience which we all have, is usually with them.
Of course. Well, we're going to take a quick break now, but don't go anywhere. Our next Moral Money dilemma involves children, paint, and expensive shoes.
Hello, podcast listeners. My name's Danny Boyle, and I'm the Telegraph's commuter editions editor, which means it's my job to provide you with great journalism that makes your journey to and from work as enjoyable as possible. I can't prevent train delays or guarantee you won't get caught in the rain, but I can make sure you're up to date with the best of the Telegraph every morning and evening. And I just wanted to let you know about one of the ways you can get all that in audio form. All you need to do is join my WhatsApp group. Every weekday, my colleague Chris Price and I bring you short audio briefings directly to your smartphone at 8 in the morning and 5:30 in the afternoon. And the best bit? It's completely free to sign up and easy. Just click on the link in the show notes for this episode. I look forward to having you as a group member soon.
Welcome back to Moral Money, where Sam and I are joined still by Harry de Quetteville, the Telegraph special correspondent. I'm going to dive straight into our second letter today, which asks, can I ask another parent to pay for damage to my child's £80 trainers? You're grimacing, Harry. Okay, let me read the letter. My 4-year-old son attends an upmarket play school every week. Last week, he returned home with paint on his £80 trainers. It cannot be cleaned off. My son has told me which child was responsible for the damage. Am I within my rights to ask for the other parents to reimburse me the cost of buying a new pair? Your jaw's on the floor, Harry, but what do you think about that?
Are you out of your mind? I mean, if you send your children to nursery, they're going to you're almost paying for them to get paint on their trainers,
right.
So my first question is, what on earth are you doing getting £80 trainers for a 4-year-old? I didn't even know that such things existed. Their feet grow so fast anyway that, next week will be another pair and another pair. I don't see how you could possibly expect that to happen. It is an incredibly fraught business generally on any subject, sidling up to other parents and saying, do you know, your little John pushed my kid over I was rather thinking maybe you could tell him off. I mean, you do that at your absolute peril.
It sounds like you're speaking from experience.
Well, I have 2 small boys. They are 5 and 6, 5 and nearly 7. And it's really important to get on not only them with their schoolmates or their nursery mates, but you with the other parents. It's these are people you're going to be seeing for years and years, and I think it's diplomacy is the better part of valor, if that's the right expression, which it's not. But there you go. Discretion.
It is now.
Discretion and diplomacy are the better part of valor. I really honestly think that you can't go about keeping a spreadsheet for the slings and arrows of nursery. Because what happens when they come back to you and say, oh, well, they scrawled, your child scrawled on my child's
lunchbox,
or wall, or knocked over our heritage vase, or your kid could do the same thing easily for the cost of thousands.
Absolutely. And people routinely invite 20 plus children into their houses. Lord alone knows why. But for children's birthday parties, and the felt tips get emptied, and walls get drawn upon, and that is part of being a parent.
So you think you're opening yourself up to future problems if you were to confront this parent?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's no two ways about it. And I also think that parenting is about dealing, if you think that you can manage every circumstance, like paint on shoes, you're just going to be disappointed. Constantly stuff is being thrown in your way. Our eldest boy, we got a call from his primary school, and he'd ended up at the bottom of a sort of playground mall. They were playing tag, and they all sort of fell on each other, right. And he broke his nose. And the headmaster met us at the gates of the school, and there was our boy with his sort of nose the size of a tennis ball, and blood everywhere. And the teachers were sort of shocked, and he was fine. And we just asked him, sort of what happened. I ended up at the bottom of a sort of hall. And you can't legislate for everything. And I think to try and be sort of litigious about the ups and downs of parenthood, of course there are going to be limits, but accidents happen. Get on with it.
Yeah, you can't break the other kid's nose in retaliation.
Absolutely
It would be highly frowned upon.
Highly frowned upon.
Do you think, this reader is specifically asked about whether they can ask the other parents to reimburse them. Do we think the nursery has any responsibility? Perhaps if they know that there's going to be arts and crafts on that day, do they have any responsibility to say, take your shoes off, or tell the parents, don't send them in expensive clothes?
Potentially. You maybe want a nursery to put sort of smocks on or something. Yeah. But I don't know. We constantly want people not to treat us like idiots. And yet if we're demanding that nurseries saying, by the way, your child may get mildly scuffed, by doing we might be doing arts and crafts in a nursery, then I think 90% of our readers would say, please don't treat me like an imbecile. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of putting this Superman outfit doesn't give you the ability to fly on.
Yeah, exactly.
Caution, coffee may be hot.
Yes. Yeah. Are we going to be asking readers to sign huge disclaimer forms? Or nursery parents, huge disclaimer forms. There's enough bureaucracy as it is. One sees just by being a parent, the disclaimer forms, all the stuff you have to sign. So let's save it up for the big stuff.
Harry, you clearly have very little sympathy for this reader who's written in with this question, and the other readers would agree with you. In the poll that we put to them, 99% said you should replace the children's shoes out of your own pocket, obviously. And only 1% said that they would dare confront the other kids' parents to ask for the cash. But one thing that this question for me does tap into is this idea of keeping up with the Joneses. It's very easy to be snooty and say what kind of parent would put their 4-year-old kid in 80-pound trainers. But these kids have to go to school, they have to make friends, they come home really upset that somebody else has something that they don't have. And it might not be 80-pound trainers, it might be a very nice pencil case or a school bag or something. But as a parent, how does that speak to you, that element of this?
Definitely. Certainly our boys are, quite small, and so they haven't mercifully arrived at that real social pressure stage. But you can already see some children arriving with fancy gear, and doubtless that will really creep in. And I can see that parents are under real pressure, and it's often parents with the least time who are working hardest, trying to make ends meet both financially and in terms of time, who are just trying to do the obvious best thing. And sometimes that might be get them a good pair of trainers, off they go. I've worked really hard. I just want my child to have good things. And, so I don't want to be knee-jerk and snooty about the reflexes to buy your child nice things. But I think it's where the knee-jerk comes in is where you buy them nice things and then you're upset when they get damaged, because children damage everything.
Well, a lot of the readers making the kind of comments, let them be kids and let them have a childhood. If you do deck your kid out in designer clothes and then say to them, oh, don't get them dirty, you're restricting them somehow from, part of the fun of being a kid is playing in the mud and running around with your friends.
They need drapes to run around in.
Exactly.
Although one reader summed it up quite nicely when they commented to the parent, I can't believe you'd expect your child to wear the same trainers twice anyway.
I'm amazed. I mean, I think children, especially if you have more than one child, then they have to get used to hand-me-downs and I think it really is a healthy attitude, and one that we work really hard on to try and ensure that our children know their own mind and aren't constantly looking at other people. I really celebrate the fact that our boys are incredibly unglamorous, unfashionable, don't really know what's sort of fashionable or not. That will come.
Not like you, Harry.
Well, they follow their father, who has no idea.
Well, I think my favourite, maybe sum up this with my favourite comment from this one, which was from Andrew Clifton, who managed to find a very positive take on this when he said, I'd hang on to the shoes, put them in a plastic bag with some silica gel as a dehumidifier and preservative. The child who dabbed paint on them may grow up to be a Turner Prize winner, and you will have a valuable piece of juvenilia on your hands.
Absolutely, go for it. An original pair of Andy Warhol shoes, who knows?
That's about all we've got time for today. Thank you very much, Harry de Quetteville, for being with us today.
Such a pleasure. Thanks so much.
And thank you for listening. Remember, if you have any moral money dilemmas you'd like us to dissect on the show, or even any thoughts about anything that you heard today or in a previous episode, you can always get in touch by emailing us, moralmoney@telegraph.co.uk.
And we have a number, so call us, leave us a voicemail, and you might even hear your voice on a future episode. The number's 07867 162 170, and that will also be in the show notes to this week's episode.
Several people got in touch to tell us what they thought about last week's episode when Bryony Gordon told a reader she should not ask her flatmate's boyfriend to contribute to the bills.
I completely sympathise with the reader. The same thing happened to me while I was at university. My flatmate's boyfriend moved in with us and they would both stay at home all day with the heating on, with their electric blanket on, watching TV, and it really infuriated me.
I love Bryony Gordon and I think she was great on the podcast, but I completely disagree with her when she told your reader that her flatmate's boyfriend shouldn't contribute to the household. If he's living there, he should contribute. It doesn't necessarily need to be bills, that feels quite formal, but I don't know, a Tesco shop.
I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Bryony. She talked a lot of sense. I didn't necessarily agree with her, but I thought that the way in which she actually analysed the situation and her perspectives were very interesting and captured my attention.
Thanks to the listeners who've got in touch. Do subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really does help other people find the show.
And if you're all caught up on moral money and thirsty for more great Telegraph content, head to telegraph.co.uk/audio, where you can get a 30-day Telegraph subscription completely free. That means all the personal finance advice you could ever dream of. Plus a bit of news, politics, lifestyle, culture, and a few other things.
Our producer is Theodora Louloudis, and come back next week when we have got Deputy Comment Editor Lucy Denyer talking about whether you should tell your husband about your hidden stash of cash and how to haggle on holiday.
See you next week.